There are folks out there who often express an exasperation over what they see as an attempt by science or scientists to claim a monopoly on truth. Religious apologists will sometimes claim that religion is also a valid source of truth, while presuppositionalists will say that you can't even claim any knowledge of the truth without assuming the existence of God. Folks like Ben Stein almost seem to believe that there's some conspiracy on the part of scientists to exclude from science any hypotheses that seem to imply theism. I think a lot of the people who voice some of these objections overestimate the epistemic weight of the claims that scientists actually make. Their notion of truth seems to have little to do with what scientists actually assert. They seem to see truth as a perfect conformity between our beliefs and some transcendent objective reality that exists independent of our experiences. And they seem to believe that scientists claim to be able to access that reality and claim to be the only ones who can access that reality. But science is actually a much more modest undertaking. My favorite quote from Stephen Hawking, which I've quoted many times in other videos, is, "I shall take the simple-minded view that a scientific theory is just a model of the universe or a restricted part of it and a set of rules that relate quantities in the model to observations we make. It exists only in our minds and does not have any other reality, whatever that might mean. A theory is a good theory if it satisfies two requirements. It must accurately describe a large class of observations on the basis of a model that contains only a few arbitrary elements, and it must make definite predictions about the results of future observations." That's not to say that idealism is true necessarily. Rather, this means that ideas developed through the method of empirical science are ideas about experience. That's what empirical means, rather than claims about what does or does not lie beyond experience. Cy ten Bruggencate says that without God, science can't prove that you're not a brain in a vat. And it's true that science can't really prove this or prove that solipsism is false, but it doesn't really need to. If we have theories that consistently predict experience, then the question of whether solipsism is or isn't false is of no practical consequence. Even if it is the case that all of our experiences are illusory and we're actually all plugged into the matrix, if knowing that fact can't help us predict those experiences, then that knowledge is practically useless. And this is a question that really lies beyond the jurisdiction of empirical science. To further illustrate this point, here's Ollie from PhilosophyTube.
When religious apologists object that science is trying to access a transcendent or objective reality and imply that religion or revelation is the proper way to do that, what does that mean? Objective truth is usually taken to mean true independent of anyone's beliefs. Your feelings on the matter won't change whether it's true. And that is exactly the kind of truth that science does uncover. The world is round, whether you believe it or not. The heart pumps blood and is not the seat of emotions, whether you believe it or not. Despite the earnest and strident beliefs of Mr. Ken Ham, evolution is true. Science does consistently predict experience, no matter what your beliefs about it might be. If by objective you mean that it's true independent of anyone observing it, then even God couldn't have access to facts of that sort, since if God exists, there is some way that it is like for God to experience the world. It doesn't have a view from nowhere, it has a perspective, no matter how all-seeing or impartial that perspective might be. There's another hitch in this idea of a deeper or more real reality than the one that we experience, and that's that reality doesn't admit of degrees, to paraphrase Thomas Hobbes. Things aren't more real, they are either real or they're not. It doesn't make sense to say that both X and Y are real, but X is more real. And they might be different in some important way. For instance, one of the commenters on my channel once suggested that an island is more real than an archipelago, because an archipelago is spread out. But that's not really existing more. The archipelago and the island both exist, it's just that one of them has parts that aren't spatio-temporally connected. So not only does the position of these apologists misunderstand what science does, it's not entirely clear what their objection means.
Scientists do often dismiss hypotheses based in mysticism or the supernatural, but this is not because they automatically view them as wrong, per se. They dismiss them because they are essentially useless to the scientific endeavor. Scientists are not these epistemic tyrants who dictate to people what is or is not unquestionably true. Rather, what scientists claim is that some ideas appear to consistently accurately predict experience, whereas other ideas not so much. Even if there is a God, and even if God is revealing truth to the religious, if those revelations can't be used to make testable predictions, they simply have no place in science. Don't forget to check out PhilosophyTube's channel, link in the description.